So, ladies and gentlemen, today I have Kelsey Walker from the Green Desk. I got it right that time, and the author of Face Everything and Rise. Correct?
Yes.
All right. So, what brings you here today? What irks you?
What irks me right now is the challenges that we're having with the Supreme Court, with the leak that came out just a couple of weeks ago about overturning Roe v. Wade. It's really a hot button issue for a lot of people, and especially for me with my own personal abortion story that I have.
Now, I'm assuming you're against it being overturned?
I am against it being overturned.
And why is that?
So it starts out with a pretty tough story. So at 17 weeks pregnant, we found out that the daughter that I was carrying had osteogenesis imperfecta type 2, which is
Okay.
the lethal version of brittle bone disease. So all the bones in her body were broken. Her ribs were breaking in on her heart and her lungs, and her condition was threatening my life. So we made the difficult decision at 18 weeks to have an abortion.
Okay.
And unfortunately, a lot of the laws that they put in place to try to deter you from having an abortion caused me some harm, such as asking me 6 times the day of if I wanted to have an abortion. And did I really want to be doing that? No, I really wanted a healthy baby, but it was kind of, the hand I got dealt. And making me do an ultrasound when I had already done a 2.5 hour ultrasound looking at all of her broken bones just days before. And then not allowing my husband in the room with me for the final stage of the procedure was incredibly hard on me mentally. So, those things made it especially challenging to recover from that mentally. And, just in general, the loss of our daughter, Hope was her name, was incredibly challenging. And so a few months ago, I actually published my first book, Face Everything and Rise.
Okay.
It's my memoir about the abortion that I had. And what I found was, because I wrote it down and said it out loud, several other people came up to me and said, "Wow, we really wish we had someone like you to say it out loud, because I've been through this. I've been through something like this. I've been through something like that." And, so what I did was I founded From the Green Desk to coach people who have had abortions, lost pregnancies, or lost children, because it's just a incredibly impactful loss, no matter what way you arrive at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry that happened to you. I mean, it's terrible for anybody to go through, really, especially in the circumstance of there wasn't really much to do like that. I can't relate because I never experienced anything like that. However, I can only imagine what it's like. That
Yeah.
it's hard for things to be out of your control. Like it's just hard to do. But
Yeah, for sure.
you don't want Roe to be overturned because of why?
I don't want Roe to be overturned because, sorry, my kiddo is calling me and he was supposed to be asleep by now. Just one
Okay.
sec. Sorry, he's like, can I sleep in your bed? Like, okay, bud. He's little. So, um, so I don't want Roe to be overturned because it's going to affect people like me who need abortions as healthcare. That it literally is a life or death situation. And even if it's not what people classify as a life or death situation, if it's a decision because you can't take care of the child that you're carrying, or it's a decision, or it's rape, or it's incest, or, you name these instances that go on, you know, people are going to lose access. And that just fires me up, because even though it was a hard experience, it was an experience that I needed to survive. There's actually a woman in Texas named Anna who, at 18 weeks, her water broke. And they
At
found out,
18 weeks?
yeah, 18 weeks. And
Wow.
yeah, and they found out that the baby she was carrying was malformed and that it was dying, and
Mhm.
she needed the procedure that I had. But because she was in the state of Texas, they couldn't give it to her. So, um, it was hard on her because she had to wait and hope that her body recognized that the pregnancy was ending and miscarry. And she had to hope that her body wouldn't get an infection that could kill her.
Right. It's similar to a staph infection, I believe.
Yes, very similar to a staph infection. So, these situations are already going on in our country without the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And it's only going to get worse. They talk about, the only the only abortion that you're outlawing is a safe abortion at this point.
That's not actually true, though, because Roe v. Wade, all it does is it keeps it at the federal level. Roe v. Wade, if abolished, turns it to the states themselves for them to have autonomy over what happens. Now, there are states with trigger laws that will change up fundamentally how each state operates, but like California and a lot of more blue states will end up still having abortion to, I mean, even Colorado went, I think, too far for me for Colorado's law. Do you know this one?
I don't know Colorado's law.
So Colorado is how it was presented to me was at 9 months after the baby's been delivered and it survived the abortion that they just did on it, they're going to resuscitate the baby, make it comfortable, and then have a conversation with the mother what to do after it's already been delivered.
That's it. That sounds pretty
That is
crazy.
way too far.
Yeah.
Now, I stand at a very centrist libertarian view where I don't think the government should have a say in it. I really don't. However, my more pro-life side of me says you gotta, at some point after viability, it really shouldn't be done. Granted, there are medical exceptions. I will grant those. However, like, I see abortion as contraceptive the biggest issue. And I think that's what a lot of pro-lifers don't agree with at all. So I think a lot of the uneasiness, tension is just being escalated because nobody's listening to each other.
Yeah.
Now, would you agree that abortion as contraceptive is wrong?
I would say that abortion as contraception is not wrong in the cases of incest, rape, and things like that. Now, I don't agree with it being used as the only form of contraception.
Agreed.
So, yeah, use birth control, use condoms, use
exactly
anything.
There's many other ways of doing it.
Yes. So I believe in that for sure.
Now, would you agree that if we went with a contraceptive, like, okay, rape, incest, whatever circumstances, say up to the first trimester, would you be okay with that? Like, you are allowing abortion from the first trimester, give or take a few weeks?
Well, so most of the time in the first trimester, you're like, before it becomes like a full trimester is when you're seeing the abortions happen. So I think I'm very much so in the belief that people are, have reasons to get to that point. But I think that up to the first trimester, it should be allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're agreeing, like, after it's viable to be living outside the body, we're talking about the fetus, the baby, however you want to classify it. After viability, it should no longer be a thing to be done unless certain circumstances hit the floor? Like
Um,
to save the mother's life, to there's a harm to the baby, or it's going to be a miscarriage, so things like that.
yeah, I would
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Because
So I'm,
there's a
yeah,
lot of people that got mad at me when I said that.
yeah. So I would agree that, um, and honestly, there's not that many cases that go past your first term
Right.
so far as needing an abortion goes. And usually it's the people. So we didn't know there was anything wrong with Hope until the 17-week anatomy scan. The 13-week anatomy scan showed that she was normal. There was
Right.
no genetic marker that they tested for as, a common thing, until the 17-week anatomy scan. And when they found all the broken bones, that's when they did an amniocentesis and tested her. And at that point, the all of the symptoms were pretty true to osteogenesis imperfecta. We did the genetic marker testing so that if we decided to have future children, we would be able to find it right away.
Well, that's good. I'm glad technology's gotten
Yeah.
that far.
Yeah. Well, luckily, it was far enough that when we did decide to, well, to be truthful, Ember did beat birth control, our youngest. So when she came along, we were able to test. Oh, my dogs are wrestling in the background. Um, um, we were able to test at 13 weeks to see if she had the same genetic defect that Hope did. And if she would have had the same genetic defect, we probably would have had to make the same decision just because but we would have at least been able to make it sooner rather than come to the point of having an anatomy scan and thinking that we're going to find out if it's a boy or a girl, or we're going to, have all these things, the whole song and dance, and then have our hearts broken. So it was a very guarded time for us.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I coming from a non-parent, it sounds like it. I can
Yeah.
only slowly, shortly imagine what that's like because it doesn't sound fun at all. Like you just no.
No,
Honestly, I don't know how a lot of parents survive nowadays, anyways. Like, not to age yourself, but would you call
yeah.
yourself a millennial? Or
Yes.
okay, you're a
Yeah,
millennial.
I'm
All
a
right.
millennial.
Okay. I'm 31. So like I'm
Oh, we're the same age.
really
Cool. Yeah.
I was a January baby in 91.
Me too.
No shit.
Yeah.
Capricorn?
No, Aquarius. Just
Oh,
past the
you
cutoff.
man. All right. Well, now that I dated you. so so okay, let's put it this way. How old's your oldest? Because I think you said you had 3 kids.
Including Hope, it's 3.
Okay.
Um, so my oldest is 9.
9. And
Yeah,
your youngest is
3.
3. All right.
And Hope would have been 5 this year.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about education. Are you
Okay.
familiar? What state are you in? Just
I'm in Missouri.
oh, you're a Missouri
Right.
girl.
Yeah,
Oh
right,
man.
right next to the Kansas border. I actually spent half of my life in Chicago before we moved back to Missouri. So yeah,
I'm an hour and a half away from Chicago. I'm over in
Oh,
Indiana.
okay, cool. Yeah.
All right. So do you think that how is your education system down there for just about pre-K, right?
Yeah, my daughter is in pre-K, and then my son is gonna be a 4th grader soon.
So are you happy with
So
the education system down there?
um I'm not thrilled with the bullying problem.
There's a bullying problem?
Yeah, there's
But
a
all the schools say there's no bullying. There's a zero tolerance for it. Come on now.
yeah, what schools say. Well, the problem is that it's not happening at school, it's happening in our neighborhood. We've got probably, I can look out my window and we have a park right outside the window of my office here.
Okay.
And when we first moved to this neighborhood, um, my son used to just roam the park and have fun and play with friends, kind of like we did in the 90s.
Street lights came on, you better be home.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So, I can see everything from the window. Well, he started getting bullied by little girls. He's a very sweet kid, and he's a very cute kid. And these girls just like to torture the crap out of him. And it extends to school as well. And even though we've had conversations with the principal and with the teacher, it doesn't seem to resolve. And so
I know I'm not a parent, but this is the best advice I was ever given.
yeah.
Back in the 50s, they made gender equality. Everyone's allowed to be hit the same.
Yep.
You get 3 warnings and then you're done. But that's more because I'm a male and more egotistical and, confrontational. But at some point, bullies step down when you offer them resistance. It's not going to be a good situation. It's going to be a bad one no matter what you do. But personally, as a non-parent, I'm saying this. I'll keep emphasizing that.
Yeah.
Have your kid hit them. They'll stop. I mean, he'll get a couple of days off of school, but they'll stop.
That's true.
Because there was some evil women I went to school with.
Yeah, I had some evil ones too.
Oh, I know girls got more bullied because they talk back and forth and bicker a lot. I'm all too familiar with how that
goes. Yeah. But pre-K is really good here. There is a whole Kansas City Birth to 5 initiative, and they throw a lot of money at it, which they should. It's a very critical age to get reading and literacy instilled in kids, to get their minds really moving so far as learning, and they're like little sponges.
Oh yeah.
My daughter's favorite book right now is Do Princesses Wear Hiking Boots? And she's really into that. She's really into me reading to her before bedtime every night. And it's, something that I let her come to me naturally with, and something that she was instilled with at school, because I didn't want to be the parent that, yes, I read to her when she was little, but if you force literacy on a kid, I believe then there's resistance with that force. But if they kind of find their own love, and they find their own, they pick up their own book, I always make sure to never say no when she picks up a book and says, I want you to read me this. So,
well, that's nice. Because I was one of those kids. I hated reading. I really did. But then somebody introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons, and then here I am owning all of the D&D books, and I'm reading them. I know all of it. So it's like, I guess he got me.
Yep. It's like, oh, you found the 700
pages later. I thought you hated reading. Shut up.
Well, I grew up loving reading and really loving writing, and that's what I do for a profession now, is grant writing and creative copywriting. And so that was kind of my thing, but I really hated math. Math was not my forte in school.
Math. I'm okay with math. I'm okay with it. I was more or less better with algebra than I was calculus or the economic side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then chemistry and physics is where my math really shined, because I could do pretty well with the rounding of numbers and getting things approximate. So that was always good for me, because gladly physics was like, this isn't math. This is close enough. This is this is what we're doing. It's close enough.
Yep.
But Missouri is a fairly red state, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You don't sound too happy about that.
Not particularly. It's not the fact that it's red, it's the decisions made by people who are of the red persuasion that I have challenges with. Like right now, not to be a broken record and return to the subject, but there is a representative that is proposing a bill that puts bounties on the heads of women who travel outside of the state seeking abortion access should the trigger law go into effect.
I thought I might be construing Texas with Missouri, but I thought that law was based off of the doctors, like not the
So
women.
it punishes the doctors, the women, and anyone who helps transport the women.
So then Amazon and Tesla would be in fault too, then for that.
Yep.
Interesting. Now, is your I might have to look him up and I'll put a photo in the after when we're done here. But I'm gonna have to figure out who he is, who they are. I'm not sure who Missouri's leaders are, but it sounds like they're establishment shills because I know a
Okay.
lot of populist Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
They're rhinos in the legit sense. They're Republican in name only because that's the only way they'll be elected. But essentially,
Yeah.
there's a rise of populist libertarians running as Republicans. And I'm
Oh.
advocating for them because they're taking the 2010 and 2002 liberal approach. They're what
Mm-hmm.
we would call traditional Democrats, being in 90s
Oh,
kids.
gotcha. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they're Republican in name only, but they're liberal, the
Yeah.
traditional liberals. And I'm advocating for every single one of them I see because a lot
Yeah.
of their policies are bring it home. Everything's got to be done at home.
Mm-hmm.
And we desperately need that in this country.
Yes.
We really
Yes.
do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and unfortunately, Missouri is definitely like a red state, although all the way red, as opposed to rhinos. But um, there's also just some kooky people that are up there. We had Eric Greitens. I don't know if you knew about him, but he had like tapes released of him like, you know, abusing people and like physically abusing people and having affairs and doing all sorts of crazy
Well,
crazy stuff.
that's just a lot of people in power that's been in power for more than 10 years.
That's true.
I mean, you can look at Nancy Pelosi. She was straight as an arrow until her 10-year mark. And then she just, where did she go?
Yeah.
My God. I'm surprised the IRS hasn't gone after her for corruption.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with TikTok stocks?
No, I'm not.
So TikTok stocks follows a lot of the politicians and wrote an AI that follows their betting pattern in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, Pelosi bought Netflix, Amazon, HBO, and Tesla stock. The pandemic hit, and all those stocks tripled in a few months.
Oh,
And they're the policymakers. So
yeah.
I'm really surprised that they haven't opened an investigation on that.
Well, and it's just wrong to, she would have been one of the ones that was anticipating the pandemic to hit and decided to capitalize on it for her own gain.
Oh yeah. There was a time where YouTube were censoring all the pandemic videos before the coronavirus was announced. Like there was a couple of YouTubers who got their channel deleted because they're like, something weird's going on in China, guys. Expect, shortages and delays. There's a disease going around. Videos demonetized, taken down. Yeah. So what do you think of CRT, critical race theory, taught in schools? Do you know anything about it?
Oh yeah. It's definitely something that gets debated about local here as well as in our kind of sister state, Kansas. And, I think that there's two sides of the story that
Absolutely.
is getting taught, that needs to be taught. Unfortunately, a lot of our history books are written by, predominantly white men. And but that's because at that, while history was being made, they were the ones that knew how to read and how to write and how to record and things like that. And so I think that it's important that um, the other side of history gets told from this perspective of people of color.
Now, can you point me to an example of like what was misconstrued or not in a history lesson?
Um, Not specifically, because my kiddo hasn't brought home that
Okay, that's fair.
yet. But again, like when you're looking at different political issues, um, the effect on people who are white versus people of color is going to be different. So something that, I was privileged to not have to worry as much about, or necessarily wasn't affected me as much, was, it there is literally triple the amount of women who will be affected by abortion who are women of color than women who are white. So there's actually triple that will have abortions because they're in places of poverty. They're in places that are not well sex educated. There's, numerous challenges, and it leads back to, unfortunately, the fact that they're people of color.
It actually follow this rabbit hole with me, because I've done some research into this, and it's a little bit of a slow burn. Chicago, we're going to use Chicago. Section 8 housing.
Yep.
Was a government program put in place by the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
After Section 8 housing went through, they cut the funding for it. And then that divided the areas into Hispanic, Black, and African, and in the suburbs were white people. At that point in time, they introduced Planned Parenthood, which went into the old Section 8 housing where the redlining was. With the this is the line in the sand between the Latino and the African American houses. So you would have a dozen Planned Parenthoods in those areas and only one or two in the suburbs, making them easily accessible.
Yeah.
Those numbers would go down if we didn't have it easily accessible. Granted, I agree we need to have more sex education, but through my school experience, we had a sex education at 11th grade. And a lot of people I've talked to had it about 11th grade. And that was Black, Latino. I even had an Asian guy on, had the same talk about, it was all about 11th grade. And these guys are everywhere across the country. So it kind of comes down to a lot of the higher numbers of abortion comes down to more bluer cities rather than in countrysides or suburbs. So I think it's actually a more city problem than it is a country problem. That's where my rabbit hole goes down to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see where you could draw those, draw those kind of conclusions, but at the same time, you're looking at access versus need in these cases. So,
access versus need.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that people in rural communities or red communities don't necessarily need abortion as healthcare. I was living in Salina, Kansas when I needed my abortion and had to travel 3 hours to the clinic. If I was in Overland Park where the clinic was at, it was in a blue dot of a red state.
Yeah.
And, would the access have been easier? Yes, but the need wouldn't have been any less.
Okay.
In my case.
I see what you're saying now. Okay. So then
just to go down that rabbit hole, just a little deeper.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. So then what do you What's your proposal on how to either solve or have a solution, some way of compromise? What do you think we should do?
Honestly, I think that we need to listen to more people who have had abortions, listen to their stories more to put more of a human context around what's going on. Especially with our lawmakers, they're very good at wrapping laws around numbers, right? And
Absolutely.
statistics and things like that. It's a lot harder to choke a person with laws than it is to choke a number with a law. So I would propose that we, listen to the narrative, because the narrative right now, very much so with lawmakers, is, the slut shaming kind of thing that people are going and getting pregnant, partying, getting pregnant, and needing abortions. And, if those people are out there, then they're out there. But
Oh, they're out
the
there.
the the majority is actually people who are already parents. 60% of women who have abortions are actually mothers already and are needing it as a backstop for their health care. I think that if we listen to the stories a little bit more and took the numbers out of in into context with the story, I think that it would help change the trajectory of what we're doing. You know, make it so that there's a compromise across party lines where they go, okay, well, while we're against, we're against it after, say, the first trimester.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But there's certain things that happen on into a pregnancy that threaten the life of the mother, that threaten that, the baby suffering,
Right.
things like that, that happen past the first trimester.
Right. Yeah.
I think that there's compromises to be made, but I think that right now it's kind of like you said earlier, everybody's screaming so loud at each other, no one hears anything.
And that's why I'm trying to find common ground across everyone.
Yeah.
I had a very Catholic man on my show earlier, and we found a common ground on the basis of first trimester within reason and then medical exceptions. And he was totally for it. And so I'm astounded I made an old man compromise with me on that. Like, that's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, and I know that it's part of it is you don't know, because it's such a taboo subject, it's hard to know who who's been affected by abortion. So, people don't talk about it. That's why in my book and in my organization, we call it the silent scream, because we don't talk about it. And with that, I forgot where I was going with this. So it's getting a little late. Not that late, but like late enough for my brain to short out a little bit. But with that silent scream, you just don't know who in your life is going to be affected by abortion. You just don't know what their circumstances were, or how they needed it. And the only way to, that's where I was going with it. So my mother is Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
was like actively donating to pro-life organizations until we found out about what was going on with Hope. And my mom pivoted and was like, you need to do this to save your life.
Right.
And she no longer gives to pro-life organizations. She does now. No, she's not out protesting with me and things like that, but she understands it more now from the perspective of, a, a child who is suffering and a mother who would have lost her life. she was very adamant about, even though she's long-standing Catholic, has been, every church or every Sunday at church. She is very adamant that what we did was to save her daughter's life.
Right.
So
Right. I mean,
there's
yeah,
common ground to be found.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I even for myself beforehand, when I was young and dumb, I would say like, yeah, whatever, it's not my thing to say. It's is what it is. And then I started researching into it because that's just how my brain's wired. I need to know more information. And then I come to the conclusion of uh 2010 liberal, safe, legal, rare. That's pretty much my position on it. But I don't think it needs to be glorified like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And agreed, there is common ground to be found. But just, I'm glad that your organization's going through and trying to find, some kind of compromise somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
especially because you're bringing stories forward of like the silent scream of what you said. I it's hard for me to have an opinion, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I have no kids. They just I
Yeah.
no kids. Like I got no kids. I'm a dude. What do I need to know about women, right? It's just I shouldn't have
Yeah.
a voice on it, but at some point you do. That's just
Yeah.
it.
Of course. And that's how my husband feels. He's like, you know, or used to feel, was very much so like, I'm a guy who is never going to have to physically go through that. So I'm not going to have an opinion. And then we got thrown this huge tragedy curveball. And he's like, okay, well, I understand why this needs to happen in some cases. And he's like, again, he's he's not quite there that he's going out protesting with me, but he also is more challenged in his grief journey than, or not further along in his grief journey than I have been. And part of that is because I was the one that was carrying Hope. And so that's kind of a, a challenge that he has, being a man, is that he did not have the same bonding that that allowed him to move through his grief differently than I did.
Right. And that, I mean, hopefully I never have to be in that situation. I really hope.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah, for
good
sure.
or fun from anything I've learned today by any means. And again, I'm sorry for that to happen to you. I, it's
It's,
a shitty situation, no matter how you cut it.
yeah.
Uh, where would you like to see this country go? Like in a broad sense, where would you like this country to go?
I would like it to be a place that I'm excited to raise my kids in. That, there's definitely pockets that I'm excited about. Like, go, one of the things that I did in college was work search and rescue in New Mexico. So on my off days, I would go hiking in the mountains and just show them just basic nature beauty. And so that's something that, I look forward to showing them. Um, I wish that there was more common ground to be found, and that we as adults can handle our business and learn how to have um, learn to stop screaming so we can hear one another, so that we can teach our kids better.
Well, okay, I'm gonna bring this up. There's a lot of issues with parents nowadays,
Yeah.
and they don't teach their kids anything. They
Yeah.
just shove an iPhone in their hands like as soon as they can touch the screen and they're done. And I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it a lot, and it bothers me because all I could think is that would never happen when I was raised. Never happen.
Well, so yeah, my husband does work nights, so there is some emergency mom mode where I need a little bit of peace and quiet and we'll hand them a
Hey,
tablet.
I am
But
not doubting that at all. Like, you know what? You do
but
you, but at least
no,
you're trying. At least you're reading to your kids. You're being influential on them. Like that's a
yeah.
huge thing. But a lot of these moms are just, yeah. Here's your YouTube. Go for it. Leave me alone. And then go and do the old trope is eat bonbons and talk on the phone.
Mhm.
It's just ridiculous. Like you're not a
Yeah.
mom. You're an Instagram mom. Stop it. Like it's just
Yeah.
it bothers me.
Yeah. My Instagram is pretty pitiful, and like I just
I don't
like
have
I
one.
envy. I just do because everyone said that was what I needed to do to help grow my nonprofit, the certain social media accounts so that people can follow what's going on and what I'm doing, which I'm like, okay, I can do that. But then you look at my personal one and I'm like, I'm too busy chasing children. If it is not scheduled, it is not happening.
If you want to grow your channel or anything that you're doing, I suggest getting
Mhm.
into alternate tech. Like there's
Okay.
like minds.com. There's
Mhm.
Rumble where I upload all of my videos onto it as well as YouTube.
Mhm.
Uh, Minds is like a Facebook and Twitter mixed together, and
Yeah.
it's a more free speech absolutist, but it follows Connecticut's laws. Like if it's legal in Connecticut, you can do it on Minds, and
Yeah.
it's as fair as it can get. And I get quite a bit of engagement on there compared to like Facebook or Twitter. So
Yeah.
that's one way to grow.
Yeah,
As
that's
one
awesome.
creator to another, that's one way to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All right, we got the last 5 minutes. It's 9 o'clock your time, just about. You're tired. You got mom things to do. Any final thoughts you want to put into this conversation?
I would just say thank you for having the conversation. And I like that it wasn't you know, just an agreement, but it was a finding middle ground conversation. And there's going to be more and more challenging conversations that come up
Oh yeah.
surrounding that content. It's only going to get worse, and I don't know that it's going to get better. So having um, a nice place to have those more challenging conversations is nice. So I appreciate it.
I think I can do one more common ground in less than 3 minutes.
Okay.
Healthcare for all.
Okay.
Here's my healthcare for all program. You
Okay.
get your arm cut off, you go to the hospital, they charge you nothing because they can either reattach it or, stump it off and save your life. But if there's like a life-threatening disease, that's where private insurance picks up. So it's a dual program system. Makes everyone
Okay.
happy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because it's like you got into a car accident. Now your insurance isn't going to pay up. Well, that's not the case because we can save your life because it's an accident.
Yep.
But rare diseases, that's where insurance picks up. And I think that if we have one single insurance company, within reason, being
Yeah.
negotiated with, different people and whatnot, like that would be one thing. It's got kinks to work out. But for the most part, that's my common ground for healthcare for all.
Gotcha.
And
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I made a progressive cringe when I said that. Like outwardly progressive gay black man goes like, I don't really know about that. It's like, why not? It's making everyone happy.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, that's not
Yeah.
what I want. I'm like, well, it's not about what you want. It's what everybody wants.
Yeah. It's about where we can make progress as opposed to, being stubborn about what each other wants.
Oh, absolutely. They made buffets for a reason, damn it. Everyone gets everything. I can say that because I'm fat. All right,
awesome.
Kelsey, this was fun. If you ever feel like coming back on, you are more than welcome to. And if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Go to fromthegreendesk.com. It's got all the social links, it's got the book links, it's got all the things.
All right, cool. I will have that down in the dibbly-doo down below.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on. And everyone, have a great night.